When?
Welcome back. We just took a little bit of a break. For the second half here of our discussion, I'd like to start off on the subject of consciousness, because that's such a big word, and we've already used that word a lot in this first hour of our talking. Maybe we should step back a little bit and kind of sort of define it, what it means for each of us, and maybe a little bit in personal life, and also what it means in terms of doing the work that we're here to do. Anyone care to start?
Well, consciousness for me is a very, if you stepped inside my brain, I think you'd be a little bit freaked out. I say that because I tell people, listen to my head, and they're kind of shocked to hear that it's totally silent and I don't have all those voices. I'm also very much on an animal aware basis. I take the world in the way an animal does. My frontal cortex, and you guys, is really very powerfully defined, overgrown, and hyperactive. Mine is very non-active. My reptile brain is much bigger, so I feel threat. I feel, I see things in a very different manner. My wife says that there's this influx of indigo children, of autism, one out of every 7 seconds or 7 minutes. One out of every 150 children born today is born autistic. She says that it's a species desperately saying we need to get back to the animal root, the reptile brain, if we're going to survive as a species. So she says the species has chosen to have a lot more autistic people being born. And just for the record, autism and mental retardation have nothing to do with each other. Being blonde and being stupid don't come together. Most people think that autism and mental retardation are identical. Leonardo da Vinci, the reason I know he's autistic is, like me, he can write with both hands in opposite directions simultaneously. The reason Albert Einstein was considered a poor student is because he was autistic. Thomas Jefferson has a book diagnosing Jefferson. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, many brains who were outside the box and created things were autistic. And idiot savant is another word we don't like. You don't have to be an idiot to be a savant. But my brain, by definition, is real different, but not alien to yours. I just show you how to come over into where I live, and you say, now I remember. I say a 4-letter expletive, and I have the same thing as soldiers when they say, sir, yes, sir. It's there. I just have to help you remember where it is. Now, the process of doing that is twofold. If I'm going on too long, say so. The conscious brain needs stimuli to survive. If you put somebody in an isolation tank, they start to call up memories, anything to have food for the brain to function on. Most neurotypicals have words going on 24/7. I have pictures. I have to translate what you say into a picture, make my matching picture, and then translate my picture into words to talk to you. I teach people how to go into where I live, theta. I say, from here, when you get back home, don't think, speak, or read a single word. And they're like, can't do that. And I said, well, you can smell. What? City stinks. Smell. Oh, there's grass. God, there's trees. When you start to use sensory data to fill up that void, you shift over into that other form of consciousness where I live. So I ain't got nothing that you don't have. Accessing it just wouldn't occur to you. So for me, consciousness is being present in the moment. And I carry it too far. I have no yesterday, no tomorrow. I mean, if someone leaves, they come back a year later, to me it's like they just left the room. I have no linear time. But I have a moment in this instant that's so much more full of stuff I'm picking up from you. Him with his, oh, that hurt you, son of a bitch. You with, I pick up all these things, and people say I'm prescient. It's all touchably how you see it. I teach how to see it.
He's a good guy, even if he likes to beat on me.
So, consciousness.
Well, the way I define consciousness and the way I'm working with consciousness, there's many levels. Consciousness is a level of awareness. And most of us are working on 4 levels. The physical level, how do we feel, our senses. what do we hear, how do we smell, touch, the sight, etc. The five senses. But it's in that physical level. When you work with acupuncture, you're actually working on the etheric level, which is a bioenergetic field that's above the skin. When I went to school, I asked acupuncture instructors, the four Asian doctors were supposedly the most knowledgeable, and I asked all of them, where are the acupuncture meridians? And they really couldn't tell me, but it's on what's called the etheric field. So by tapping into the etheric, something else opens up. This part of the physical, but it's a little bit different. When you move into the astral, which is the emotional, and then mental, which is a little higher than that, those are the four lower levels of consciousness. And that's the four levels that the masses are working with all the time. I think as we move into this next phase of humanity, we need to open up that abstract mind, which is where you're at, the silence part, the quiet spot. Mental chatter. It's hard to turn that stuff off. In Chinese medicine, they say mental chatter is a Shen disturbance, which means some kind of a heart disturbance. And to shut that mind off, how do we do it? Today, in a big city like LA, where there's a Starbucks on every corner, and most people aren't going to sit around and meditate to get to that quiet spot. So how do we try to open up? How do we try to encourage them that there's something else besides the physical, etheric, astral, and mental? There's something else available. Maybe I'm not interested. Okay, that's fine. But maybe some people are interested. Yeah, I want to get to that spot. We're seeing a tremendous outgrowth of the different kinds of yoga. And some of the yogas are just straight physical exercise, but other ones are helping you to start aligning your physical to move into that inner body. So esoteric acupuncture is a way of, just by getting the needles and just lying on a bed, you just lie there, you don't have to do anything, you just try to be quiet. It's helping us to move into what I call the abstract mind, into what some people call the causal body, the Buddhic body, Atmic body. Some people call that energy hyperspace, but being able to tap into another realm of reality, like it's always been ours. We were told we didn't have that, and like I said earlier, we were programmed that that's not real because that's not something you can smell or touch or hear or feel or taste. And as we move into this next level of humanity, things like you're considered having sixth sense or maybe a seventh sense because you know things that the average person can't are not familiar with. Well, those types of things are innate, inherent in everybody. Just how do we remember that or re-remember that? How do we get to that spot? And so consciousness now, as you move into this next level, one of the things I tell people in this information age, don't get information mixed up with the truth. Just because you hear it doesn't mean it's the truth. And one of the things I think we've lost as a group in America is common sense. I've had people ask me, I read this article that had this genetically modified apple and was sprayed. It's much healthier than the organic apple because you may get something contagious from the organic apple, and this is all clean and sterile. I said, come on, common sense. What do you think is better? The apple off the tree with nothing but,
nature.
Yeah, nature, or this genetically modified, clean, sterile apple. We lost that common sense. And so once you align with the common sense and start learning how to still the energy, I think we can move into this, it's the next progression. The indigos coming through, whatever the terms are, the children coming through, their brain moves so fast that a lot of them are diagnosed with this hypertension, hyperactive disorder. Well, really what it is they are understanding things at a much faster pace than the older generation. And since the older generation are the ones in authority and they made the rules and they're not following my rules, we're going to now label you as being abnormal. And since you're abnormal, you must take this drug to try to be more normal. So as adults, as we help to spread this idea that, wait a second, there's another level of consciousness opening up, something else will expand, something greater, something is this next phase. Although some people are into this doom and gloom, I'm into this very optimistic phase where we can control what's happening with the consciousness. In quantum mechanics, our thoughts actually create the reality. It changes the vibration at that quantum level. So if you're thinking fear, yeah, your world's going to be fearful. But if someone else is thinking good thoughts, more happy, more expansive thoughts, that's the way the world's going to be. And it starts with trying to get to that quiet spot that you're always talking about. But it's not easy. It's not easy to get to that spot.
I go to the mechanics of it, and I say if you experience it, you got it.
Yeah.
And if you can assist the person in experiencing it, then again, I'm stand up.
Sure.
Here you go. Toss it up and hook it out of the air. Toss it up and hook it out of the air. Toss it up and hook it out of the air. Now, come so you can see him from this angle. And now, toss it to me. And what I want you to do is I want you to not look at the ball. Now, see, you didn't expect that to happen. We don't know that that's built into the system. It's always been there. You experience it and say, whoa, where did that come from? I take people and make them have the experience that I know will happen because I understand the physiology. And if it's a stroke person, don't you understand? I can't walk, I can't feel. I count on I have a woman, she's 6 years in a wheelchair, dead left leg. I poked her in the liver spot, and the leg jerked back, and I said, did you feel that? She said, feel what? I told you my leg is numb. Did you move your legs? I told you it doesn't move. Well, look down. Your leg felt it, your leg moved. That's impossible. Well, it just did it. She's now walking. I have to trick the brain into accepting what it cannot refute because you just caught this sucker. And most people would tell you you have to look at the ball. I do that standing with my eyes closed on a Bosu ball. We have phenomenal capabilities, but only once you've experienced that kind of consciousness. Now, we've gone from physical. How do we get it to experiencing consciousness? I do regularly things that on first sight people say that's magic. And what I teach at the College of Psychology is how I know. I took a woman once and I said the human body responds to certain stimuli in a natural way. When you see an anomaly, you know something wrong. And I went like this. And the girl stood there. And I said to the class, did you see what she did? The class said, she didn't react, Mr. Seitz. And I said, can I tell you what I saw? She said, whatever you think you saw. I said, you get hit at home and you've got to learn to just shut up and take it. She starts crying. I said, how? I said, you engaged your scalenes, your sternocleidomastoids, your multifidus, your upper trapezius, but made no defensive reaction. And then when the class, oh my God, I see that now that she's focused me on looking at it. We're capable of seeing it if we just learn. We're capable of experiencing it. But sometimes you have to trick the person into a conscious experience of letting go of all the, and it's not complex. The left brain operates at the speed of articulation and operates in facts. So logic thought looks like, go into red Lexus the blue, and I'll get back to you on that. Let me think about it. Roses are red. I hated that song. By Blue Bland did a version. Yes, I've decided, well, you know, you just dicked around, and you call it logical thought. God thought or right brain thought. You have 10 minutes before you have to be somewhere, you fall into a sleeping dream. Oh my God! 1 minute? That's impossible. How could you just stepped into the right brain experience of your brain operating at the speed of... I address stroke survivors by using the right brain to create the motivation and the picture, and the body finds the modality to make it happen, no matter what it thinks it can or cannot do. You can trick a person into or set them up to experience a different form of consciousness, and then they'd say, I like that.
Yeah.
That's how I do it.
Well, for me, consciousness is actually the subject of what I do in terms of how I've directed my medical life over these last 15, 16 years especially. I've been a physician for 28 years, yet it's been sort of a movement of my career path that really reflects the movement of my own consciousness development and the evolution, so to speak, of my consciousness. About 16 years ago, I joined Dr. Deepak Chopra at 3 months after he had opened the Center for Mind-Body Medicine in San Diego. And given my background, the first thing that he had said to me that day when we met was, I would like you to create a new system which takes all of this mind-body integration stuff but really brings it to a higher level by integrating ancient spiritual principles. And so I did. What was interesting about that was, as this new system from something called neuro-linguistic programming, which is a sort of very mechanistic kind of approach to awareness, or neuro-associative conditioning, or this form of therapy, or this form of mind-body integration, came the use of the term that I coined holo-linguistic awareness, meaning the completeness of the energies and the perspectives on language and meaning into consciousness. Well, what I found, first of all, was as I was putting together all this stuff and thought I was so bleeping brilliant, was when I would refer to the 5,000-year-old texts of the Charaka Samhita, of the Vedas from ancient India. They were writing about that stuff 5,000 years ago. So once again, I'm thinking I'm so smart, but actually all I was doing was uncovering from a particular new experience approach for myself. Yet what I was really doing was I was tapping into yet a larger field of what we may call consciousness, cosmic consciousness, the consciousness field that the ancients or the masters, the yogis, the rishis are called, the shamans, the true healers. What is that field? That is what we also call non-local awareness, because it means going beyond myself, me and my personality and my ego. That's the field where, as you've described, Mikio, you get your downloads, for example. As you were describing your learning of acupuncture points and doing pulse diagnosis in Chinese medicine, I was introduced to a 7-layer system in Ayurvedic pulse diagnosis. And I was given the basics of all of that, but what was happening to me is I put my 3 fingers on someone's pulses and I'd start seeing flashbacks to other lives in these people. I'd get images, I'd get names of Uncle Teddy who was touching her in some strange kind of way. I'd get smells, I'd get sounds, I'd get all of this kind of information. And at first it was frightening to me a little bit because I had not only the shock of it suddenly flooding into my awareness, but I also had that dilemma, which is like, what am I to do with this? Followed by yet another dilemma, which was, how am I to be clean enough in perceiving this information and not projecting my own crap into it, contaminating it, my own localized consciousness, my own localized awareness, vis-a-vis this which is coming from a non-local source, a non-local field beyond me. So that was also a very enriching phase. And what I realized was that I'm being gifted with not only a wondrous gift, but also a great responsibility. That great responsibility of how to engage myself, how to have the willingness, the discipline, the perseverance, and especially the willingness to let that ego part fall away. When it starts to get to such a point where it feels like, yeah, I got it, I'm bad, I'm a master, I'm an expert, I know my stuff, and then a need to let go of all of that as much as one can in order to take on yet more information, more lessons, more learnings, to get to yet another level of this experience of consciousness. So in the sense of how I employ that personal journey with a patient or with a client, it is about getting them focused in this experience of consciousness. What does consciousness mean for them? It may not even be a word that they're used to using, or it may be a word that they're only crudely have a sense of feel towards. But by actually getting them into an exploration of consciousness and many faces of consciousness, what it looks like, what it feels like for them on a local level, on a very broad spiritual level, on a societal level, whatever it is, an environmental nature level, that to be able to open and have that fluidity so that a person isn't locked into just this localized shell of consciousness, that makes a big difference for them in terms of their ability to heal, to be able some kind of way to experience getting unlocked from here.
If I may respond to that in 2 levels. One, what I teach in the class you're currently taking with me is what the measurable parameters of difference in neural impulses are, so that you can build a matrix that gives your left brain permission to accept the intuition and say, I think she's upset, but looking at her feet, I can see why I see that. I'm giving my left brain permission to believe what my intuition is telling me. I teach the 7 modifiers of neuroimpulses: size, tempo, density, rhythm, dynamics, shape, setting, direction, so that your intuition suddenly has permission to believe itself. And secondarily, one time I was lecturing on diaphragmatic use and laughter yoga thing, and a woman comes up to me and she's obviously distraught, and I'm like, why don't we go to what's really bothering you? And she said, I'm 24 and I have to have a radical mastectomy. And I could tell as the animal, she was waiting to be pushed to the edge of the herd. And I thought, what can I possibly do? And I thought, how can I? And my consciousness is like a diamond with 1,000 facets. And I remember being on the way to Sloan Kettering when they thought I had thyroid cancer. My mother, my mother-in-law, and my wife were all over loving me, being there. I'm like, go to the mall. I got a dude with a knife. I'm more alone than I'll ever be. Please, come back later. And when I tuned into that, I didn't say a word, but I opened that facet of my diamond to her, and suddenly she felt heard. I created that common consciousness between an aspect of my life and where she was that allowed the silence to be. That's how I do. I'm as spiritual as a monkey wrench. Biomechanics.
A monkey wrench does have self-awareness.
Is that why it keeps biting me?
That's why it falls on your toe, not the floor.
Interesting when you're talking about consciousness and healing. I had a very interesting thing happen to me a while back. This is the first patient client that died under my wife and our care. And she had advanced lung cancer, orange scans, in a wheelchair. And oh yeah, I think we can help her. And this is early on, and I've been studying a lot and thinking, okay, we do this and this. And so over the course of treatments, we decided best maybe she should go to Tijuana and get some initial treatments. So we helped arrange her to go to one of the clinics there, and she was there for a while. And they said, okay, this is all we can do. You do this therapy back at home in the LA area. And so somewhere along the course of this, of us seeing her, she died. And the first thing was, oh, did we do enough? And we had one of the nurses, one of our friends, we were doing some treatments that we got from Canada. And I'm thinking, oh, the healing, maybe I'm not that good of a healer, someone died on us. And then later, I don't know how long later, I said, you did heal her. Because she died in her family's home with her sister in a very peaceful environment. And part of the healing is helping that transition to the next phase. She didn't go through a lot of pain. She wasn't under chemotherapy and in a strange hospital setting with strange nurses and tubes in her nose. And from then I said, oh, healing comes in all different different ways of expressing that energy that we helped her to refine her deathing process to make it the easiest to move on to the next phase. And from then on, there's been several other people. I visited them at the hospital, and I remember a couple times I see the person, and by choice their family had them in the hospital, tubes in their nose. And I remember maybe 3 times touching their hands and saying, if you know who this is, just squeeze my hand. So they would just barely squeeze it. I'm talking to them, and each time, was there a certain point during the touching the patient, I would say, your journey is finished. It's time to let go. You have a lot of chi. There's a lot of energy. There's nothing to be afraid of. If you understand, squeeze my hand. They always, barely squeeze. I said, when you decide it's right, just let go, because your journey will begin in another phase. And I started understanding, healing is not just making it feel like change their consciousness so I feel good. I had a few aches and pains and I can run around and eat my hamburger again. Healing is helping their journey on whatever stage their journey is, and give them the least amount of challenges or how can I say, just make it easier for them to continue that journey. So part of the healing that I really understand it is for acupuncturists. When people call me, say, oh, I have somebody that's got really advanced stage cancer, this and this. One of the things I tell them, well, think about this, but this is what I would ask the patient. Can I ask you a personal question? It may sound kind of interesting, but can I ask you a personal question? Do you want to get better? And it's kind of interesting because if they have to think about it, you know there's something and there's some other thing. And then I would ask the question, okay, if you're better, if this journey changes, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? Because sometimes when people are sick at a certain stage, they, you know, if I really, you know, fight to get better, and I'm stuck back in this job I can't stand, this situation I can't stand, I'm really at an advanced stage, and maybe the journey is, you give them the right energy, maybe at some level they are going to turn around miraculously, or maybe the energy you give them is enough to help them in a journey in another phase. It's not for me to say, oh, I want to help you to live, and I'm going to help you to die, but just giving them the opportunity to get that chi, because it takes a lot of positive chi to cross over, because people, especially in the Western world, are afraid. I'm afraid to die, I'm afraid of the unknown. So to help them with the chi, but then their subconscious, or whatever level, they will, the healing could be to, you let go of this physical, it's worn out, it's broken down, I'll get another physical, or, no, I still need some work to do in this physical, and I'm gonna change it. But you give them the chi, and their consciousness will decide for them.
I can share a couple little stories. I did train in Slum Kettering as part of my training, actually.
Did you bring me coffee while I was in there? No, it was the Irish
maybe
nurse
not.
that did.
You were too young, Jack.
You fly
I'm
away.
102. But actually, this is something that I actually learned it on the cancer wards. And because when you work in a cancer center full time, what it really means nowadays, and even more so back 30, 28 years ago, you see a lot of death. And hospitals, we've also come to know energetically and spiritually, are incredibly toxic environments. Spiritually, they're very dangerous environments as well, because there's a lot of that energy of suffering towards the end of life, or suffering during the period of that illness, and that energy stays in that, concentrated in that environment, in that field. That's the subject of another video session, perhaps. But I noticed quite often something that I dubbed the Nova effect, which was a patient who was very, very ill and very close to death, and seeming to be just about ready to leave us. And then all of a sudden you come in the next morning and they're sitting up in bed, and they're bright and they're ready for breakfast, and it looks like a complete miracle healing. And of course the family gets all rallied up and everybody comes rushing off to the hospital. Thank you, blessings, and you know, our prayers are answered and everything. And some short period of time later, they're dead, they're gone. This may have been anything from minutes to sometimes weeks. But I noticed that with enough regularity that I began then to look for it. And so I called it the Nova effect, which is sort of like what happens when a star that's dying gets to that last moment, and then finally it goes into this flash of a nova. Well, I also noticed, and was that in the exhilaration of the moment, a lot of projecting that people were doing. You know, I get the credit because I'm the religious one in the family, and I prayed the hardest. You know, I'm favored by God, and God worked this miracle through me. Someone else, you know, this was answering my prayers because I couldn't live without this person. I couldn't stand the idea of this person moving on. A lot of that personalized projecting was taking place. Later, what I came to realize, what was not taking place, unfortunately enough, was one, the medical staff had no idea how to explain these things, and secondly, had no real way to try to engage the person or the family in something that would be more proactive, rather than just simply reacting to simply what seems to be good news for now. Maybe with a warning like, well, it may be just temporary or so, but let's not get our hopes up too high. There's still a lot of disease there, etc. But something else that was really very profound that could have been implemented, and through some folks like my friend Daniel Brinkley, who has died 3 times and has gone across and has been given all kinds of information and prophecies, and has been brought back into life, into this sphere, to share and to teach. Part of what he's done is he's taught over 30,000, I believe, hospice workers to work with people in close proximity to help them in with a smooth transition out of this life realm. But what was not happening then was someone to step forward and say, perhaps this seeming miracle cure of the moment, or at least resurgence of energy within you, is an opportunity for you to get some things brought to closure. An opportunity for you to maybe close the loop with someone, maybe to reach out and say what you always really wanted to say, but because of ego or personality clashes, you didn't get a chance to say. Maybe it's time for some forgiveness. Maybe it's time to get your will in order, or clarify some legal matters, or whatever it is. Maybe it's time for you to just tell someone you love them with all your heart and not based on how they're going to respond. And by being able to utilize that space where spirit, where nature has given us, maybe only for a slight moment in time, that added opportunity, some guidance there to reflect and be able to do something that helps move this process of life a little bit further on in a positive way. Doesn't mean necessarily the person's going to die, because perhaps in that moment of those decisions, there is enough of an activation of additional chi, additional resources, additional support from spirit and from family and from the environment and from medicine that might be able to take them further on the road of recovery. The second example, my mother. In August of 2000, my mother collapsed while getting a routine examination and then was pronounced brain dead. She was in a vegetative state with no electrical activity of her brain showing up on the screen. She was in what was called electrical storm or ventricular storm for her heart. So for 42 hours she was in this vegetative state, and her heart was having to be defibrillated on maximum electrical load. And so every 5 minutes or 3 minutes or so, she was boom, bouncing up on the bed like this. I was summoned. Well, first of all, I was 400 miles away, and that night I wasn't aware of any of this happening. And